Okay, so we are looking at how to build a resume today. This PowerPoint's a little bit larger, but it's mostly just like a lot of empty space. This is another one that it's a challenging one to kind of write notes for, similar to yesterday's. A lot of times you just kind of have to like practice and do it, which is why we're gonna have another resume template out there. Now, for the record, not a lot of people were taking advantage of it. A lot of people were just straight up sending the version of the cover letter that I sent out, and that's great. Like you are super more than welcome to do that. For the record, for those of you who are a little more like into specific writing and like you have what you're like, look, I just don't like that format, I don't like the font, I don't like the you are more than welcome to find like a cover letter format that like you found on the internet that you're like that you've used in the past. Feel free to use those. Like that is totally okay. The same thing is true, and I think more important for today's lesson, which is the resume. So when it comes to resumes, again, same concept. You guys are more than welcome. If you have like an existing resume format that you love and you want to send that, you want to like make it personal training style and then send that out, you are totally more than welcome to do that. Today's lesson is going to be a little bit different. Just because resumes are all about like segmenting information, and a lot of you guys might not necessarily know what all of Sochi has to like offer and what's coming down the pipe. So I'm going to do a couple example lines of information that you can do to put into your resume, and then you'll see an example Sochi resume as like our handout today as well. And it's literally just like, if you have like a lot of training experience, like some people already have been working in gyms and stuff, you should put more emphasis on your work experience. But if you have very little of that, you should put more emphasis on your education. And so like, depending on how much room you have, maybe you're gonna list your CPT, CES, and FNS all as like separate pieces with information under them describing the cert, or maybe you're just going to keep it really short and you're going to be like, I got these three, and then you're done because you have other room, you have stuff filling up the room elsewhere. So everybody's going to be a little bit different. If you have a form, I'm going to send a format that is a very traditional, just kind of basic resume. Again, that is easy to kind of fill out either on your phone or on a computer. But if you have like a specific format, please feel free to use that format. I want you guys to actually have a legit resume when you're done. And if you choose if I choose a format for you and you hate it, that's not doing you any good. That's what we're doing today. So making this the right sized fonts. PFT 100 leadership, kind of. Business and sales. What is this? PowerPoint 3 resumes. Okay. Okay, so we want to be able to understand like what a resume is and what its purpose is today. So we'll talk really briefly about that, the importance of like using your resume effectively, how to structure it, what good content is, a good length for your resume. We're going to see 2 examples in the PowerPoint today. What should not be part of your resume. That's almost just as important as like what should be on it. I will say I've gotten some weird resumes coming across my desk, and it's like, I guess it's not super inappropriate for this industry, but I've had people be like, I can deadlift this many pounds. And it's like, okay, that's great. Like, but so can people I have trained, not people I've hired, that's kind of a weird thing to put on your resume. So we'll talk about like what to leave off as well as what to put in. We'll talk a little bit about like what a video resume is. I don't think that's super applicable to our industry. A resume obviously is it's an important tool that is basically a snapshot of your entire like professional life. It's a snapshot of like all of your skills, your experience, and anything that kind of sets you apart from your standard like person calling themselves a personal trainer, you know? So it's a very important part of the job search process. It's a formal document, right? That's one thing that we need to remember. Being that it's a very formal document, we want to make sure that we're using, we're treating it as such, it following, kind of a standard format, making sure that the font is clear and easy to read, not too fancy looking, So resume is going to be an important part of the job hunting process. It is a formal document that includes work and experience in order to, you know what, I actually don't like that. It's a formal document that used to show employers a snapshot of an individual's work and experience. Work experience and education. There we go. I don't need to have these definitions up top. I just always feel really awkward if that's not the first thing we do. So that's what a resume is, right? It's an important document that we use during the job hunting process. And it shows just a really brief overview of like your work history, your experience, any of your special skills, and things like that. So it's very crucial to design one that is like very easy to read, that somebody is actually also going to take the time to read. You want to keep your resume to one page. That's one thing that we always talk about. I know that 2-page resumes are kind of getting more popular nowadays. And I know that like there's a lot of these modern resumes out there. I don't really hate those modern resumes, but I think that like, here's the thing. Let's take a look at, I want to show you like a modern resume. Resume. So this is Canva. This is like a free editing software that you guys can use actually. And if anybody wants to build a resume off this website, please feel free to go for it. It's actually a pretty cool site that lets you do like, if you're ever designing like flyers or business cards or, stuff like that, this website rocks. It's how I've been making all the thumbnails actually for the little YouTube videos. But take a look here. I'm going to click this one. This is a really kind of standard resume format in the world of like in this modern era, this person's like a graphic designer. So it makes sense that like they would have like a little bit of color in their resume. And it makes sense that like they would maybe have like different sections that are kind of, put apart. This is very pleasing to look at, right? This is a nice resume. But there's this new trend that honestly is very silly. I don't know any employer that actually appreciates it and looks at it and considers, this when they're hiring somebody, which are these weird little like stats down here. Like this looks like a video game. Like, oh, my character's doing really well in graphic design, but I need to level up my illustration. Like, man, that trend, this is like a trend that has been popular in resume building, but is not popular amongst like a single employer. I've never heard an employer say that they are looking for that. So, I think that you should have your skills. Like it's clear that this person knows graphic design, illustration, photography, motion graphics, videography, and layouting. Layouting? Is layouting a word? Layouting is what I do when I'm playing Frisbee and I dive. I lay out. That is.
That's funny.
Yeah. That's why the Frisbee League is called LA Out. because that's what you call it when you're diving. That's super weird. So yeah, that's a kind of I don't dislike that resume. If it's for a graphic designer, I get it, you know, like it's something that looks a little fancy. There's some other ones out there too. So if you do want to go with something like this, I've had students do this in the past. They've gone with these versions, but they've just slightly changed them, you know. That's okay. You can do that, you know, like I really like this one here is pretty nice. I think that it's silly to have the photo on it. Again, photos are not something you need to have in your resume. So I would probably just like remove that and maybe replace it with like my initials or something. Or I would just move this whole thing and make my name and professional goals like a little bit larger. But you can see like specializations, like this person, what is she? And what is she? She wants to attain internship position. Okay. In social media management. Okay. So she's looking for social media stuff. So she's got her work experience as like a tech writer. She's looking for an internship. So you can see she doesn't have a lot of experience, and that's okay, right? She doesn't have to have, you don't have to have a ton of experience on your resume. I love that her contact information is super easy to read over here. Like that's great, right? Like boom, 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 boom. Piece of cake. Again, similar, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. You don't have to put your address. You can simply put the city, or you can just not include it at all. Academic history, right? She's putting a little more emphasis on that. The one thing I would change about this resume, because she does appear to be pretty new in the industry, like she's looking for an internship. She's only got like 1 year of experience here and, you know, a little, like maybe a little bit of experience here. I would actually probably put this academic history up top and her work experience down below, which is something we're going to talk about today. If you don't have a lot of actual like practical work experience, you want to put the most important information towards the top of your resume. And so your education becomes almost a more important part. So it kind of depends on like where you're putting emphasis. You know, I started with my education up top. A couple years later, it moved down to the middle. A couple years later, now it's like one little tiny line at the bottom of my resume. It's got some specialized, go away, Zoom thingy. Wait for it. It's like a T-Rex. You got to make sure you don't move and then it goes away. Specializations, social media management. She's got languages spoken. Dutch, Irish, German, Italian. Girl speaks like 5 different languages. That's awesome. Oh, wait. And that's European and she's got Asian languages as well. Good Lord. Social media. She's a linguist. So I think that's a pretty cool, like impressive resume. I like this format. So if you do want to go with something like this, you guys can go to canva.com, make yourself a free account, just sign up with your Facebook or whatever you want to do. And there's a lot of really cool stuff. And, you know, for those of you who are also like working on other stuff, I know some people are doing like social media posts regularly. I know some of you guys like are working in places where sometimes you have to make an occasional flyer. Canva's pretty freaking cool. Let's see here, fitness flyer. Boom. Whole bunch of them. They're all like these photos and stuff. These are all, what do you call it? Public domain pictures. So you don't have to worry about copyright. So yeah, let's see here. Let's see if there's like one more. We'll do Instagram post. There you go. You make yourself a little Instagram cover for photos. I don't know anything about social media. But there you go. It's kind of a fun website. So if you want to go there and, you know, just like I said with the cover letter thing, if you want to write your own cover letter format and then send that over, awesome. If you want to use Canva rather than the resume I'm going to send you guys today, go for it. If you want to use Microsoft Word's basic resumes that are on there, awesome. I love it. But I will send again today a simple resume that is sort of like Sochi approved out to everybody, just like we did with the cover letter. So expect 2 emails from me again today. All right. So employers are generally going to look at 3 things on your resume. They're going to look at your ability, your experience, and your skills, right? So your ability is going to be based on like your education. Your experience is telling them a little bit about like, you know, your work ethic and like how much, you know, what you can't learn from school. You know, it's like if you have a lot of work experience, they're going to expect that you're sort of rich with, you know, life experience. And then your skills are things that are, actual and transferable, right? Like something like if somebody put on a resume, they can deadlift 500 pounds under their special skills. Like I'm going to look at that and go, okay, that's actually not super irrelevant. Like I'm not saying you shouldn't include something like that, but it would be a little, I would put more emphasis on being like, I'm really good at like Olympic weightlifting. And it's like, oh, okay, Olympic lifts, like great. Like that's a very specific category. That's a special skill that not every trainer has, right? Or if it said like special skills, kettlebells, right? Kettlebells is a specific type of training. It's okay to include stuff like that, but like bragging about like what your 1 rep max is, I don't think that's very relevant on. And I see it I see it a lot actually. Maybe I'm the weird one.
People actually put that on their resume.
Oh yeah,
You've
for
seen
sure.
that?
And oh no, I'm not even exaggerating. I've seen it more than one hand's worth of times. I don't know if I've seen it like 10 times, but I've definitely seen it like more than a handful.
That has no meaning in your professional skills whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't care how much you can 1 rep max if I want you to lecture on physiology in front of a group of students,
Yeah.
But at the same, like, I get like if they were talking like, look, I'm highly experienced with Olympic lifts. If you said something like that, that makes a lot of sense. Like, oh, great, like this person's gonna know how to coach somebody to have like a neutral spine on a barbell squat. Like, I do want somebody who knows how to do that, And honestly, if they can deadlift 500 pounds, they probably know how to coach a deadlift pretty well. But that little bit of like the wording is what's key there,
For sure.
And like I've had on the flip side, something that I appreciate is I actually, this is actually somewhat similar, but my opinion is reversed. If you tell me what place you got in like a bodybuilding competition, like let's say you're a bodybuilder and you're like, I took 3rd at the Santa Monica, blah, blah, blah. That actually, now I'm not going to put any emphasis on 1st place, 3rd place, 29th place. Like I'm not putting any emphasis on any of that, but showing me that like you competed on like a professional level. Like if you said your special skills is bodybuilding, that is actually not enough information. But if you told me that you were in a competition specifically for bodybuilding, like that's something that takes like, you got to get through rounds and you got to like advance. That's totally different. That is something where it's like, okay, well now telling me, like filling me in on details like that, I appreciate because it shows that like you have the experience. And exactly. So so yeah, it's different. I'd say the same thing. This let's say you're doing like CrossFit games. I don't know if you would need to necessarily put like what place you got in like a CrossFit Games situation, but if you were like competitor at the 2019, regional blah 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 CrossFit thing, that's something you have to put in special skills. So yeah, that's kind of examples of what we're talking about here, and new students. Actually, one last one about, I'm doing all the skill stuff. It's not like we're not going to do this in 20 minutes. But like if you played like high school football and you're like right out of high school, that's also okay to put on like some of your skills and stuff. At least when you're brand new. Like if and it's something that I would consider, like if you're like 35 and you're talking about how you went to state in your high school football team, I'm going to be like, oh, okay. I'm surprised you haven't had any other experience in the last 15 years. But if you're like right out of high school and like, you're like, look, my team and I like went to state, like we did this and that. If you've got like high level athletics, that's all, or if you were just on like varsity, that is something you can include if your resume is really sparse as like somebody right out of school, so that is, there are like there's different situations like that, and that's another example of like where you're putting your emphasis.
Would you consider like putting like let's say like sports that you're into nowadays, so that way like if you get other clients like that are into certain sports and want to train that way, they can know to recommend them to you?
Yeah, like I actually do put ultimate frisbee on my resume sometimes, but only
Okay.
if I'm applying for like regular trainer jobs. I have two working resumes. I have like Brad Thompson, regular, hourly personal trainer, and then
Uh-huh.
I have like the half in the business world, like program director is what my second resume is.
Okay.
And that one has less of my. I don't even have like I have like one personal training job listed on there, and then I have like my teaching experience, and then I have like a lot of like thirst project stuff and public speaking stuff on there.
Okay.
So like, but no, I totally on my personal training one. I'll put like I have like ultimate frisbee, uh, just because that is like my favorite sport. Um, and I put it on there for fun. It's actually, this is where, like, honestly, if you talk to anybody in the formal world and they heard me say that, they'd be like, all right, well, that is stupid. Do not include that on your resume. I do it
Yeah,
because
that's
it
what I was
actually is
wondering.
kind of a conversation starter.
Yeah.
And when I get an interview, I will actually purposefully try to steer that into that direction because, like, I'm aware that it's a goofy thing. And so by having the awareness and talking about it, it's a great conversation starter. And like my talent when it comes to interviews is being able to like schmooze really well and
Okay.
try to be as charming as possible.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for years. I always put one
Okay.
goofy thing on a lot of resumes, and that goofy little thing is usually something for me to steer the conversation so that we don't move into a territory where I have to think too much on my feet. Um,
Hmm.
so that's its own thing. That is not going to be found in these PowerPoints. I'm supposed to talk about
I was
specific
just
stuff.
wondering. I was just wondering.
Yeah, this is all like that's probably bad advice, to be honest. So
Yeah,
what's
I,
that? Let's look at the.
I feel
Oh, go
I
ahead.
feel like that if like if you include some of the things that your interests and your skills, like
Mhm.
I feel like that would help get you clients that are if somebody's like, oh hey, I have a client that's into surfing. Oh, you know what? I got the perfect person for you. You
Oh,
know?
totally. Yeah, no, that's the type of special skill you can put. It depends on how you're going to do your skills section. Um, like some people will do skills that are like bullet point, like boom 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 boom, when it's like short and sweet like that, and you're just like you're laying out like one or two words at a time to describe the entire skill, like surfing,
Yeah,
done, you know what I mean?
that's it.
And then like
Yeah.
next one, stuff like that. Yeah, I would say like you can include, you can throw some goofy stuff in there, and you can just bullet point it and keep it short and simple, and that is going to really help you. But sometimes there's special skill sections where it is like special skills, experience in professional bodybuilding competition, like that's like a full sentence. That's where
Yeah.
you want to highlight like one, two, or three, because it's going to take up space.
Okay.
But yeah, I think like putting surfing down is great, especially in a place like LA. If you're in Minnesota, I don't know, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're gonna look at those things here, and then again, the purpose, right? Your main purpose here, and I'm just gonna put this in your notes because I know that they're actually. This is a test question. The purpose of a resume is to assist candidates in obtaining an interview. So both the resume and a cover letter, right? Your cover letter, the kind of key sentences, the key sentence from yesterday that will likely show up as like a homework or test question. A cover letter is your first point of contact, and a resume is used to obtain the interview. Those are kind of the two key sentences there. Not that like your resume isn't also your first point of contact, and not that your cover letter is not also used to obtain an interview, but those are sort of the two ways that they're worded in your future. So it's a very organized, very professional profile that summarizes your strengths, accomplishments, your interests, skills, and work-related experience. We're going to see one thing here. We're going to see interests and skills as two separate sections. And that's because the resume format that they talk about in this PowerPoint is, you guys remember yesterday I was talking about how this comes out of a textbook for like the recreation world. So like that's like if you were, and it's certainly adjacent to personal trainers. Like I know people who have been like personal trainers who then eventually worked their way into like management, and now like they work their way as like an activities director. And so it's like they don't do any training anymore. They literally set up volleyball courts, you know, but it pays real well. And that's what personal training like eventually led them to. So that when you get into like that world, apparently it's much more average. It's actually very standard to do a 2-page resume. But again, I'm going to put a lot of emphasis that is not the case in the regular like training world. 1 page always. So only include relevant information. Make sure there's no grammatical errors. It should be simple. It should be quantifiable. Meaning that like they should be able to see the experience, how much experience, and it should be very specific. So it should always include your full name. Again, mailing address, going out of style. A lot of people are just putting their city nowadays. That's what I do. Phone number, and then URL to your website or your email, or again, if it is relevant, you can put social media. You know, like if your social media, like Deborah, you've got like a lot of really great like workshops and stuff that you're hosting and stuff like that. If you're trying to like obtain a job as a trainer who's somebody who like, you know, like a company's going to hire you because like, oh my gosh, this person's going to bring customers. Like I would include your social media. I think that's a great choice, you know? I don't have everybody on social media. So that's the only one that's popping into my head directly. But yeah, if you've got a social media that's directly gonna like, you know, influence things, put that on there. Like that's great. So here's a really kind of simple example here. You can see like Mr. Joe Smith, address, email, permanent address, and then phone number. Again, like that's 2 addresses. I think that's going a little bit far. A more traditional example is right here. This is not a personal training resume. I actually added these, the Suzy Q student stuff. I found that from another PowerPoint and added that into this one. So this is a slight modification here, but I think this is a much better example of like what we're looking for. So this is somebody who's, you know, kind of a recent graduate. They got it really simple. It's just email and phone number over here, and then address. If you wanted to, and it's clean, right? It's a nice, you know, it's taking up a very specific chunk. It's not all over the place. It's all on nice straight lines. It's super easy to read. If you didn't want to do your full like city address here, what you could do is just say Chattanooga, Tennessee, maybe move that up a line, and then underneath it, include like your social media, right? Or a link to your website, if it's relevant, right? So there's still ways to kind of get that to fit. Now, in your resume, one of the most important things that you want to have, and this is a mistake that I made for quite a while actually, but you want to include what is called actually, you know, let's do this actually. Resume components, because that's kind of how I do it when I'm in the class. Career objective. So your career objective is something that I did not put enough emphasis on, but actually is really important, and it's something that like a lot of employers actually care about. I never really realized, you know, like somebody told me to include it, and so then I started including it, but I never realized how important it is until I actually hired somebody, and then I was like, oh, this actually is, like, I like the resumes that have a good career objective more than I like other resumes. And so what this section is a statement to your prospective employer describing like what your key interests are and like what it is you are trying to achieve in the industry. So like in the same way that your cover letter was information about like your like interests and why you're applying for the job that you're applying for, that's similar to what your career objective is. It's an opportunity for you to be like, look, here's what I'm passionate about in the fitness industry. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. This is where I see myself maybe in 5 years, you know, depending on how you're going to structure it. So it's a clear and concise statement. A clear and concise statement. Oh my God, typing. Providing the prospective employer with an immediate sense of who applicants are. Okay. The rest of that's all kind of extra, and the type of work or internship experience they are pursuing. So it's a little bit of information just about you, right? This is written in your voice. They can kind of get a sense of like who you are as an individual. You know, a lot of times you can use your career objective. A lot of times people are like hunting for a job. There's a difference between like a job and a career, you know? And so it's like, hey, what's your career objective? And it's like, to make enough money to pay my rent, you know? And it's like, okay, well, that's very honest, but definitely not something you want to put in your career objective. Your career objective should be like, you know, I'm trying to pursue, let's say you're brand new to the fitness industry, which a lot of folks here are. You're going to say something like, I'm looking for an opportunity to enter the fitness industry and build a career, you know, over the next few years. That's not bad, right? Like you're looking for an entry level position. They get it. Like that actually can be a really good thing. Equinox would love to hear something like that, actually. They love people who are really green, because that means that you're really moldable, and they can kind of teach you their ways of doing things. And the more often they have like consistency between their trainers, the more professional they look. So they love like the whole entry level thing at places like Equinox. And sometimes people avoid like saying that they're new to the industry, and that can actually be something to work to your advantage. Me, when I've got my my non-personal training resume and I'm looking at my more like corporate style resume, it has information where it's like I'm looking at transitioning from the hands-on part of the fitness industry into the sort of managerial part of the fitness industry, or something like that. Whatever it says on my darn resume. So that's like an example there. So that's sort of what your career objective is. It gives a person like perspective on why you're applying for this position. Clearly stated, it should always be consistent with your skills and accomplishments. Make sure that like it doesn't contradict anything that's going to come later in your resume. And you do have the choice to include it or not. I do think you should include it. I think it's a really solid part of the resume. So here's two examples, right? Recreational sports professional seeks responsibilities in structuring and programming innovative and traditional sports tournaments and events. So this is exactly what I was talking about. This is like an activities director, right? This is somebody who is trying to like organize for maybe like a rec center or a country club or something like that. This person desires a fast-paced, challenging work environment in the tourism industry where hard work and creativity are encouraged. I actually really love that. It's like, to me, that's a super solid career objective. You replace that tourism line with like fitness line, and it's like, boom. Like, I think that's great, because that shows like if somebody's looking for fast-paced and challenging, and you're applying for a position somewhere like 24-hour fitness, that again, your career objective just showed the fact that like you are very gung-ho about how you're going to approach like getting new clients. Here's a really, really, really simple one. I think this is almost a little too simple, but like I don't hate it. To obtain an entry-level human resources position, right? This person's got a lot more emphasis on their education and like certifications and skills and stuff like that. So I guess that maybe they're trying to save some space here. It's not bad, you know, but I think it's a little basic. But I like the fact that they mentioned entry level. Like it shows awareness, you know, it shows awareness that like, it's like, look, I'm the new guy. I'm the new gal. I'm willing to take, you know, I'm willing to do the tough stuff, you know. I get it. I'm new to the team. Eventually I'm going to work my way up, but for now, just get me in the door. That's all I care about. I like that. I like mentioning entry level. So that's your career objective, right? And then the next part you've got is going to be like your education record, right? I'm just going to put education. This is going to be the section where you get to kind of show like any direct education that you have towards this industry, or Jenny, any direct education you have in general. That's good too. Now, if you have like, you know, like if you have like a bachelor's in economics, but you decide to get a personal training certification and switch careers, then you're probably not going to put too much emphasis on your BA, you know, like that's not, I think it's a BA, whatever, bachelor's of something. You're not going to put too much emphasis on that. Instead, you're probably going to put more emphasis on, you know, what you studied in the realm of personal training. But you can include it because it shows that like, you know, you stuck to something and studied it and you know, got all the way through and like put effort in. It shows your work ethic. Doesn't have to be directly related to like, it's not always about like work experience towards the industry. Sometimes it's just about showing that like you are a hard worker. That's a valuable thing to show on your resume. Educational experience is a essential component of a good resume. So it can be the name of a college or university, the name of an online course or workshop, or it can be the name of a vocational school. Hint, hint. Oh, and then always put this in reverse chronological order, right? So that means newest first, okay? That's gonna be true of all your resume stuff. Always put it in reverse chronological order. Whatever the like most recent thing, that's what goes at the top, not the earliest thing. Applicants attending more than one institution, put the one that's most recent, right? And you can include your GPA, by the way, if you want to, but I wouldn't include it if it's not above like a 3.25. I wouldn't include it other than that. So you can put your GPA in there if it's really high, but if it's not super impressive, there's really no reason to include it. Especially again, like if this is going to be a section that's small on your resume, then you're probably just not even going to have room for it. So education, they put the name of the university first, where it was, and the date. That is how you're going to list out on your resume whatever education you have, right? Then underneath that, you're going to put like what degree you received. So like I would put like, if I was putting like my high school, like let's say I'm like right out of high school and I'm trying to get a job as like a trainer, I would put, you know, Astoria High School, Astoria, Oregon, June 2006 is when I graduated. And then instead I'd put like high school diploma, you know? I definitely had that on my resume for a few years, even though like I was studying personal training. And it's like my high school experience is not relevant. It's not relevant at all to personal training. I'm just showing the fact but like I kept it on there because it showed that I knew what a good resume was supposed to have. I had it formatted properly. And that honestly in itself is something that, you know, is like a plus sign, you know, like that's a good thing. So having like knowing that it's always like the name of the institution first, the date second, and then like what I received third, and then a little bit of information underneath it. That was like a handy thing that served me well. Like, and I remember like when I was younger, like going in for like interviews and stuff, and they would look at my resume and be like, well, you don't have a lot of experience, but this is pretty solid resume, kid. You know, like, oh, awesome. Like, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Roberts, you know, my computer sciences teacher in high school, who I learned way more from than anybody later in schools. So that's definitely something to include there. Here's a good example, right? The one thing, this is expected grad date. If this person had already graduated, I would put it over here, like the graduation date. But this is showing that, you know, they're already in school. So, and you can do this. She's got 2 different types of fonts here. So on our education record, and by the way, like hers is up top, right? Again, because this is somebody who's brand new to the industry. So she's putting an emphasis on education. But she's got that in bold, right? University of Tennessee at Chattanooga in bold, and then underneath it, her degree in italics. You can do that. You don't necessarily have to do that. You don't have to have different types of fonts. You do want to make sure that like they can read it easily, and you want to use bold and italics. You want to use things like that sparingly. That is what you use to draw somebody's eye to something. So, you know, if the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga is really important and super prestigious, okay, yeah, maybe put it in bold, but I don't think it's necessary every time. All right, now your related work experience, right? Like this is the sort of bread and butter as you get further on in your careers, but like related work experience. And we're gonna put related work experience because one thing that we like to include for, you know, especially some of our students here at Sochi, a lot of you guys have done like some personal trainings. You'll have like relevant work experience. Actually, I'm gonna change related to relevant because that's way better. Like that. You're gonna have like relevant work experience, but then you're also gonna have like irrelevant work experience, like stuff where it's like, hey, I worked really hard at this job. I was really good at it. I was a terrific employee, so I want to show that off. I get that it wasn't related to personal training. But like the fact that you are listing one as relevant and one as like, or one is like relevant and one is like non-related, you know, that's great. Like that, those 2 differences right there, that shows that like you have awareness of like the fact that it may not be related, but you wanted to include it because you worked super hard at it. And that's great. I think that's definitely something you can do. So this can include full-time and part-time jobs and volunteer hours. If, again, volunteering is like totally relevant. So again, same concept, right? Include the name of the business, the dates you worked there, and the location. That one, the location bit is really common. You'll see it a lot of times. Some resume formats nowadays are not necessarily including that. But again, I think it just shows that like it's an opportunity to kind of show that you've been local, which is something that employers do consider, you know? If it's like, I see that you've been working in Pasadena for the last 10 years, and you say that you live in Pasadena, and you want to work in Reseda, I'm gonna be like, oh, okay. I'm gonna consider it, but like, there's also a guy that lives a block away, which means he's never gonna be late for work, almost guaranteed. You know, so something definitely to consider. This is often your primary focus, like I said, especially later on. So include your most relevant responsibilities first, and responsibilities related to like action verbs is also a really helpful thing here. So on your experience, you want to include a lot of like what you did. You don't just want to list out like where you worked. You also want to talk about like what your job duties are. So include information about responsibilities and duties at that specific job. And if you can, use action verbs and power words to describe these responsibilities. So if you can, try to make it, you know, try to use some action verbs. Try to say like examples here, right? This person managed 5 full-time employees. That's great. Researched and created a proposal. Come on now, hook me up with an action verb. I mean, okay, it does have the word managed a lot. Like that's a power word, right? Like that's something that people look for on a resume. Any management experience is always going to be somewhat impressive. Again, remember, this is our person who's applying for a job, a recreation, like an activities director job, right? So they worked at like a sports agency in a managerial position for a nonprofit organization, responsible responsible, right? Like that's the power word there for overall operation of recreation programs serving community population of over 800,000, including blah, 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 this is sort of a hybrid version. You don't have to do yours exactly like this. If you're doing a hybrid resume, this works really well. You can see they wrote like a paragraph description, and then underneath it, they included bullet points of like what their main duties were, right? So when you're including information about your duties specific to that job, this can be in paragraph form or in bullet point. Bullet point is probably most common and is what I recommend if you are relatively new to things. Keep it short, keep it simple, knock out those bullet points. And you can see an example of that here. Oof, why is that so pixelated? So she was a human resources intern, right? And by the way, she's got relevant experience and other experience, right? So she broke this down. It's like, oh, so she's applying for an HR position. She's aware that like working at Abercrombie and Fitch, which is where she works currently, is not necessarily relevant to like the HR position, right? That's okay. She's showing that she's like aware of it, but she wanted to include like the fact that like she had to train new employees. She has to oversee inventory. She's got responsibility. They may not directly be related to HR, but it does show that she's responsible. And then her directly relevant to HR stuff she put up top. So this is a pretty good format if you're interested in doing it. And she used the bullet points. So this is very much like the paragraph style here, and then also includes bullet points. It's kind of a hybrid versus this version, which is just a bullet point version. Me personally, I think if you're new to the industry, go with the bullet point version. It's easier, it's cleaner to read, and it evenly spaces stuff out so that people can move through it quickly. As you get like more into like management, then you're going to do like the paragraph stuff, because a part of management is often like writing a letter, you know, describing an incident that happened. So showing that you know how to write like a solid paragraph describing what you did shows that like you are going to be a decent manager. So human resources intern, again, she's got it, she's following the same format she did up top, except that the dates are moved, right? So her format up top, bold followed by like where in bold, and then what in italics, right? So where, actually that's backwards. Oh, lady. I've never even known, I don't know if I've ever noticed that before, and this has been a PowerPoint for a long time. I don't like that. Yeah. All right. So she's got like the what in bold and the where in italics, and then she's got her dates listed over here, and then like you know the location of like wherever she was working, clearly based out of Chattanooga, right? So it shows that she's local. It shows that she's stable. She stayed in the area for a long time. She's applying for a job in Chattanooga. You know, I'm not worried about this person moving in 6 months. So, and then bullet points based on like what her gigs were. So non-related work experience when you're doing that. So non-related work experience. This is going to be used to highlight work ethic, even if it's not relevant to the position you're applying for. This is really just used to show employers that you are a hard worker, right? So that's really what this is for. It's just really just to show like employers that you're a stable person who knows how to hold down a job. You know, if you worked in customer service, I actually always really appreciate it. I know that we are in the fitness industry, and so we are diametrically opposed to this other industry. But if you worked in fast food and you want to get a job as like a personal trainer, like within my company, the fast food part of it has nothing to do with personal training, but like I have so much respect for anyone who has managed to hold down a job at McDonald's. That sounds kind of crazy. Like, I know that sounds a little nuts, but like, have you seen the crappy people that people who work at fast food have to deal with without losing their patience? I'm sure it's been me once or twice on like a bad day. Like, I've been the a-hole at the drive-thru who's like, oh, I just want to get home, you know? Like, and I've probably been that guy who's, I I have like a certain Starbucks. Holy crap, do I have respect for people who work for Starbucks. Um, if I want to hire somebody who has patience, I will totally put emphasis on that. So include your non-relevant stuff, you know. But I would definitely, if I were including non-relevant stuff like that, I'm going to include like information that is like customer service this, customer service that. I know how to deal with customers. I'm patient, right? Like that's something that you're going to try to like highlight and show. Seriously. Some of the hardest working, least paid people on this freaking planet. Especially Starbucks. Like, God, people with coffee shops are the worst sometimes. That's your non-related work experience. Internship experience, if you have it, that's another thing that you can include. I'm actually just going to put that down here into non-related. Intern experience, right? That can be an example of non-relevant, right? So if you did like an internship for the summer working at like a boot camp or something, that's great. Like include something like that. I know Barry's takes on like interns all the time because they just have so many people. I think it's paid. I think they call them interns or something like. Is that what they call? I don't know. There's like a, it's like you're not a trainer, but you're there. Like you're like a good form assistant basically, because they just have so many people out like working out at the same time that like there's one central trainer who's kind of teaching everybody how to do thing, and then there's all these people out there, and there's other people who kind of like walk between the lines and help with like good form and stuff. I don't think they call them the trainers. So if you had something like that on your resume, great, you know. It also shows that like internship experience obviously was like a stepping stone to like getting a regular job. Professional involvement, that is also something that I think falls under non-related work experience. So professional involvement, AKA volunteering, right? That can be a great thing to include as well on your non-related experience. You know, I always keep my thirst project stuff on my resume, mostly because it's a really good talking point. But it just shows that like I take time out of my personal life to be passionate about something and volunteer, especially something that is somewhat health related. I mean, it is certainly health related, but it's not fitness related. So that's something that I definitely think you can put in your non-related experience. And then this is kind of an interesting one, but you can also include like memberships in professional organizations. So things like sports, right? Like being part of like a team, competitions, and well received, I should put that up here, articles. So, you know, if you have written for like a Men's Health if you wrote like a column for Men's Health magazine once, like that's relevant to our industry. It shows that you know what you're talking about. So you can include things like that. So here's some examples, right, for professional involvement stuff. This person is a member of the National Parks and Recreation Association. I always forget that Parks and Recreation is an actual term. I only ever think of the TV show. Resort and Commercial Recreation, Intramural Recreation Sports Association. So these are all like things that are professional, like things to be involved with. In the fitness industry, usually that's that's going to be like certifications, which is what we're going to look at in our next section. Presentations, this person's done like public speaking, so that's kind of cool. You can include something like that. Again, I'd maybe swap that out for like if you were a member of like a successful team of some type. And then publications, like, you know, they wrote an article. So there's examples of that. Honors and awards, same situation, right? I think that goes under here. right? That's non-related, but it is somewhat related to like something if you put a lot of effort into it, similar to a job. So it's optional, but if you have anything that's like very significant, you can put that on there. I definitely wouldn't put something like some type of participation trophy, where it's like when I was in the 3rd grade, I got a soccer trophy. No. But like if you're right out of school, like Sochi, we have our honor society, ABK, which not a lot of students really know about. We don't put a ton of emphasis on it, but if you have like 97.5% attendance, which everybody's been doing real well on attendance lately, and you have like a 3.75 GPA, I think is what it is, you're eligible for like our honor society. It's like honor roll basically, including something like that. Like that can be, you can put that. I do think it usually actually fits better under the education rather than like dedicating a whole section to awards. But that's not what this PowerPoint's saying. Like they think that like awards goes under its own section. Me personally, I think you would put it near whatever institution you received that award from. Again, but that's mostly because I like the bullet point method. So activities, right? Greek organizations, academic societies, same thing, right? That's all part of the awards conversation. So activities, vice president of blah, 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 volunteer, intramural sports. There's all this stuff. Again, this person's resume is massive, right? Like these pictures here, like this figure, blah, blah, blah. That's somebody who's got like a very like 2-page resume. So they're putting all of this stuff on. Your traditional resume, you got honors and activities. You keep it really short. Again, this person's right out of school, so they're putting a lot of that. We are going to put less of that kind of stuff, and we're going to put more emphasis on certifications because that's what's big in the fitness industry, which is not necessarily part of the PowerPoint. So we're going to put it in our notes here because it's its own. It's different than awards, but it is really relevant to us. So we're going to include certifications, right? This is the stuff that sets you apart as a personal trainer, right? Like if I've got under my special skills listed that I know how to do kettlebells, that's great. But if like Frankie's got the fact that he has a level 1 kettlebell certification, like he's got a more legitimate example of like relevant experience, I'm somebody who likes to use them. He's somebody who has studied how to coach them, so that's where our certifications come in. You could walk into a gym and be like, hey, I'm really passionate about like corrective exercise. I want to work with people who, have pulled muscles, and I want to work with people who have bad posture. I want to like work on all of that. Great. Oh my gosh, I love that. Like, I love that you're so interested in that. And then the next person comes in, they're like, hey, I want to work with somebody who has injuries. I have my corrective exercise certification. That person's instantly more legitimate, right? So that's where certifications comes in. This is definitely something we want to include, right? So include information related to any certifications or specializations within the fitness industry. So our examples of that are going to be like NASM CPT certification. That is not a specialization, but is an example of certification. So that's your regular CPT certification. But then you've got your NASM CES certification, right? That's the corrective exercise. By the way, you probably wouldn't put NASM or CPT. You would put National Academy of Sports Medicine. But your NASM CES certification is not a full certification, but is a specialization, right? So you're going to need to know how to kind of list those out separately, and that's definitely something we include, and even things like CPR, right? Me personally, like CPR, I don't like to put in my certifications section. Number one, CPR is kind of like I wouldn't be able to be certified without CPR. So anybody who's hiring me as a personal trainer should know that. So I put very little emphasis on CPR. If I have like when I have a special skills section at the bottom, I'll usually just slap it down there because that's just something small and I don't have to, be like, I have the American Heart Association's basic lifesaver. I got the BLS, not worth it. But could be worth it if it's a good way to fill up some of the space on your resume. Just depends on like what type of resume you're making. There's really no right or wrong in that, right? Now, what not to include? Do not include things such as your birth date, your birthplace, your marital status, your age, race, gender, religious or political affiliations. Do not put that stuff on your resume. People are not supposed to consider any of that stuff when they are choosing whether or not to hire you. And so like it's not relevant at all. And so it just shows that you don't necessarily know what to put on a resume, and that's not something we want to convey. Do not include a picture because that can obviously also has nothing to do with whether or not they should hire you, right? Don't put your salary needs on a resume. Actually, I should put all these up. What not to include? Personal information. Don't include pictures of yourself. And do not put salary needs. Salary needs is something that you discuss during an interview, and usually not during a first interview, usually during like a second interview. So do not include like salary needs on your resume. And I wouldn't include like salary, don't put salary needs or salary history. Don't put what you used to make at another place. Now, an exception to this rule, you can absolutely put how much you have sold in terms of like product or services at a business that you worked for. So like if you did over $100,000 in sales, right? They have no idea what your commission rate is. So you're not telling them how much you made, but you are telling them how much you made the company you worked for. That is super relevant. So especially if you've got like a job that you're applying for that is directly related to sales, which a lot of personal training industry is. So definitely include something like that if you can. That's another type of award, by the way, that I didn't mention earlier. But if you've got like if you're getting like bonuses consistently because you're meeting your quota, and then like your company has like some type of award that they give you for like a commission bonus, put that award down. Totally, that's a great type of honor. Proper presentation, layout, and appearance, obviously really important. We've been talking about that all day. The reason for that is because we want it to be as efficient and easy to read as possible. So there are a couple different accepted styles of resumes. You saw two different versions here today. There's chronological style, which is literally putting your experience in reverse chronological order. So chronological style is like where your work experience is dead center on that resume, is the number one thing you're focusing on, and you are putting your most recent work first, and then it works its way backwards in time. It's great. Then there's also functional style. That's a little bit different. That's where we kind of lay things out based on categories. And so like you have work experience, you have education. Like functional is probably a little bit more what we're going to focus on because education is actually going to go up top. So it's like, what's the most functional thing related to you? If you're new to all this, to this industry, education is probably the most relevant. Work experience will be relevant later, unless you've been training clients, and then that's totally different. And hybrid style is kind of a combination that takes different elements from both. It might put something like out of order chronologically, like the example where the girl had like relevant work experience and irrelevant work experience. That's very much like a hybrid style, right? Like her most recent experience was irrelevant, but it was irrelevant, so she put it at the bottom. She put her relevant stuff up top, even though it wasn't the most recent. Number of experts believe that resumes should be kept to 1 page. In the recreation field, people are expecting it to be 2 pages. We are not that type of field. We are one page. What not to include? Don't include a second page. Resumes in the fitness industry are one page. Okay, one. No pages. Information should, yeah, they're talking about like multiple page stuff here. We're gonna go ahead and skip through that. You know what? All right, let's do this. We'll do a different section. General tips. Delete that. Ugh. Keep the resume to one page. And then do not, okay, now here's another one. Do not use silly fonts. Right? Keep it professional with fonts like Arial, Times New Roman, or Calibri. I do think Times New Roman is out of date. I think Times New Roman is actually what you saw in this version here. Very super traditional stuff. I don't know. This is where I'm probably a little jaded by living in California for so long. The West Coast is not as professional as the East Coast. It's just kind of a statement of fact. Like, have you guys ever heard like what do they call it? Like West Coast professional, and it's like you get away with like a nice pair of slacks and like a button-down shirt. Whereas like if that was on the East Coast, you would look like a friggin' hobo. Like they expect you in a full freaking suit. We're gonna see that when we talk about like when we talk about like interviewing, we're gonna talk about like what to wear. You do not have to wear a suit to an interview out here. Even if it was applying for like a managerial position, like it's just not relevant to where we live. But it's funny, like, and actually Deborah, you're our East Coast representative here. You know, I've talked to previous students from the East Coast and they're like, oh, no. You come like wearing a suit and a tie, like it's a whole thing. That's one thing that's just a little bit different here. So Times New Roman is a very upright, kind of stiff font. I think it's going out of style. I think you're better off with things like Arial. Me personally, I like Calibri the most. By the way, if you go back in time and tell high school me that I was going to be talking about fonts one day, he'd be really disappointed. So definitely something to be aware of. Don't use any of that silly stuff. And then do not go any smaller than 10. Smaller than 10-point font, and don't go larger than 14-point font. So your 14 is for headings, 10 is for your text. Do not go any larger or smaller than that. It just looks unprofessional, except for your name. Your name can be a little bit larger, but other than that, section headings, don't make them larger than 14. Emphasize key topics using bold or all caps or italics. That being said, don't use all. Don't make something that is like bold and all capitalized and italic. Like, don't go crazy on the formatting. Pick one and kind of stick to it. Stay consistent there. And avoid abbreviations. Frankie, you keep getting kicked out. Avoid abbreviations is going to be key. There's a few exceptions to the rule. CPR is an exception. Certified personal trainer is the exception. Those are such common terms in our industry that like those are the two that you can do, but NASM is not. You'll want to use the full National Academy of Sports Medicine. Okay. Oh, and don't use ampersands either. How do you spell ampersands? Right, that's that and symbol. None of that. Man, I don't want to judge this person as an individual, and I don't remember their name, but I have gotten a resume before. Actually, one more. Avoid spelling errors. Use proper grammar and avoid spelling errors. I had a resume come across my desk that more than one time within that resume, I can't remember who it was like. I think it was you, which I cannot imagine why they had to use the word you more than once or even one time. But they meant like you and I. But they had it like literally the letter U, as if it was like a text message. And I remember getting that resume and just being like, oh no. So avoid spelling errors, avoid abbreviations, especially abbreviations that are not actual abbreviations. We're living in this freaking text world. Watch for stuff like that. In general, we like chronological over functional. You guys are probably going to use more of a hybrid style because, again, that's a very new, new to the industry style thing. However, if you have been working and have been doing training, chronological is going to serve you really well. Just put your most recent stuff first and work your way backwards. Bullet information is really helpful in our industry just because it's a great way to get stuff out quickly. However, if you do want to go with like the paragraph format, go for it. That's okay as well. Always use high quality paper when you're printing it out. If it is longer than one page, it should be stapled, but it should never be longer than one page. Short sentences rather than big blocky sentences. And yeah, that is about it, guys. So I want to open up an example here. Actually, before we do, any questions? Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. That's the template. So here's an example resume that we've got here. Mr. Jim Bob Billy Bob. So this is kind of a functional resume, right? Like this is somebody who has moved things around. It's not chronological. They put the stuff that they think is most relevant. Like this is meant to be like a person graduating from Sochi like tomorrow. To find a job where I can highlight my skills in the field of personal training as well as use my talents to make a tangible difference in people's lives. That's the career objective, right? Education is Southern California Health Institute in Reseda, California. Oh, NASM CPT. I really wouldn't put that. I would put National Academy of Sports Medicine CPT. Now, what this is, under education, like this is somebody who's not listing any like high school or college information. So the institution is in bold up top. The location is below it. This also doesn't include like a date, which it should totally include like when they graduated. But NASM CPT is what they were studying. I would not put that personally. Instead, I would put personal fitness training. I would put PFT under your education. You're not studying NASM here. Sochi, we're talking a lot about NASM, but we're talking about personal training in general. You happen to be getting a NASM. You're going to have certification down here. Oh, God. Man, I got to update this. I need to like make my own resume and put it up here. This is all the stuff that was here before I got here. There's a lot of stuff I disagree with every time I look at this example. And I say this every time that I'm going to remake it, and I never do. Put national, you know what? Let me open up the template here. Resume template. Okay, here's an example of like how this looks, right? So your name, what was it, Jim Bob? Jim Bob is in Reseda, California. Email would be like jbob@gmail.com because that's not taken. Email 555. All right, let's zoom in here. Oops. There we go. Okay, I'd probably make this bold too, just to make it pop a little bit more and get their name out there. All right, example or their career objective. I'm actually going to steal that from the other one because I thought that was solid. To find a job, we're gonna I can highlight. You know what? We're gonna go like this, so I can see them side by side. So here's by the way what it kind of looks like when I help you guys with your resumes. Like if there's something that you need help with, like formatting wise, this is kind of a lot of times where it looks like. It comes to me and I'm like, you know what? It might look better if you left justify this here. Little bits like that. Where I can highlight my skills in the field of personal training, as well as use my talents to make a tangible difference in people's lives. Cool. I think that's solid. Whoever wrote that nailed it. School name, location, and then degree. So school name, we're going to put Southern California Health Institute, North Hollywood, California, or it could be receded depending on where you're at. Your degree is personal, what you're studying is personal fitness training. And then we're gonna include some information here. This person had a high GPA. That's so clearly a teacher who wrote that. And then what you studied while you were here, I would actually put that on a separate line, was exercise physiology. That's one of our classes that's very relevant, right? We study kinesiology, corrective exercise, nutrition, sports, specific training, and then leadership, business, and sales. I would just put sales. Leadership, business, and sales is the official name of the class, but that makes it look as if you studied leadership, you studied business, and you studied sales. That's not really what it is. Like I would just put sales as its own thing. Now, we've got other classes as well. We've got like our behavior change class, right? So that's like how to change your clients' habits and, create healthy habits, but also create like more positive thinking and how to like remain optimistic. That's something that is a really relevant class. If you wanted to put client behavior change, the class's official name is exercise psychology. So actually maybe that works a little bit better. But if you want to put with something that somebody's going to understand what it is. Right? Other classes, program design, right? I would say that that's also really important. So there's a lot of like different things you can put here. Whatever your most favorite classes at Sochi were, you can include. And if you don't know what a lot of those classes are, here is a kind of simple list of the ones that I think are best. Most important to include. Now, you're going to put certifications here. We'll just go ahead and fill that out. Let's start with our National Academy of Sports Medicine Certified Personal Trainer, CPT, right? And then you're going to achieve that in, let's say you're going to graduate next month. We'll put June 2020. Okay. Cool. I like that. I do think it should be bold. And then we can put this in italics, right? Because that's technically a title. And maybe I don't like the italics in the end, but let's goof around with it for now. Yeah. Do I like it? I don't like it. No italics. All right. So then let's put another one that you're going to get when you graduate is going to be corrective National Academy of Sports Medicine. Corrective exercise specialist. That's your CES, right? Then we've got National Academy of Sports Medicine, fitness, nutrition specialist. That's your FNS. Cool. pretty basic stuff. I think it stands out. Let's say you had maybe some other certifications. If you had TRX group exercise, you can include that. If you have like your you can put your CPR here, although again, we've got a special skills down here. So, you could, if you're putting like bilingual or your communication skills, if you have computer skills, that's great. You can put that down here. CPR could go down here. But this person's clearly trying to like fill their resume up a little bit and make it a little more bulky. So under this section, you can put, you can go like this and be like, CPR. That's definitely such a common abbreviation that you can just use that. Or I'm sorry, you would put the company first. So American Heart Association, CPR, right? There we go. There's all the certifications that this person's got. And again, you'd include the dates here, June 2020. Now that I see this, I don't actually really like that version. It takes up too much space. So let's get the Junes out of there. And maybe we go like that. This is where we start to get fancy with it. This is where formatting kind of comes in. That's pretty good. I don't hate that. So you can see we're putting a lot of emphasis on certifications here. I will say it is a little too spaced. I'm going to make the spacing here just a little bit less. There we go. So that's kind of your basic certifications are listed out there. Oh, you know what? One more thing now that I kind of like. Sorry. I'm a formatting nerd. Let's try making these italic. Ooh, no. Come on. How does that look? Yeah, I kind of like that. So, again, there's no perfect format to any of this. There's no like perfect way to do it. If you hate the italics, undo them, But I definitely don't recommend just going NASM, CPT, CES, FNS. I think that's not enough information. But at the same time, like this person's got a little more work experience. So, they're including a bit more of that. So then we got our work experience here. Again, job title is going to go in this section, personal trainer, company name, where you work. So they worked at 24 Hour Fitness, and they worked there from April 26th. Yeah, this was written years before I got here. Let's just make up one that's like a little bit more relevant. April 2019 to current or present, you can say that. Now, you can see they created individual, this person is going with the paragraph version. I'm going to do 2 examples just here as we're building it. I definitely don't recommend having like paragraph version and bullet point version on the same resume. I think you should pick one and stick to it, unless you're doing paragraph and bullet point in each of them, but you're probably not going to have room for that. So we'll do 2 examples here where we'll kind of retool this slightly. So you guys can see both when you're working on your resumes later today. So this person for paragraph, create individually appropriate exercise routines, carefully evaluate individual needs, and assist clientele in achieving personal fitness goals, council members in proper nutrition and exercise habits, and contribute to sales for the personal training department. All right, so that was written as if it was a bullet point style. Like this is barely a paragraph. Like it doesn't have like sentences. These should each be individual sentences if it is going to be a paragraph, right? Create individually. I would say created. I would say like, you know, well, I guess they're working there currently. Individual fitness routines, period. Carefully evaluate individual needs and assist clientele in achieving personal fitness goals, period. Counsel members in proper nutrition and exercise habits, period. And contribute to sales. Contribute to sales of the personal training department, period. I think that's a much more solid format there. Now, let's look at that same style, but bullet pointed. So this one, let's say they're doing the group exercise instructor for YogaWorks, deep cut. And they worked there from April 2015 to April 2016. So they worked there exactly 1 year. Okay, bullet point version is going to look more like this. I'd probably go with square bullets just because I think they're kind of nicer looking with this nice square format. Prepare each group exercise room before class arrived. Track class numbers and manage payments. Led group exercise classes. And tracked form and movement. Did that font change? It did. Why the heck did you change? Okay. Me personally, I think this looks a lot cleaner. I really like the bullet point version, if I'm being honest. I don't hate this, but I think it'd be a lot cleaner and easier to read when you just put those things as bullet points. Let's take a look at these things side by side so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I just think that's a lot cleaner. See what I mean? I'm not saying that you can't find a way to make it work. If you like the paragraph version, go for it. Again, there's no real right or wrong here. I just think that that's a much more solid, easier to read version. They can look for what they're, like if I'm like scanning this, I'm gonna be like, all right, so they're highly certified in corrective exercise. They've studied physiology and stuff like that. They're looking for an entry-level job. I wanna make sure they know how to do sales. All right, they got sales listed there. And, oh, cool. They contributed to sales for the personal training department, right? Just makes it really easy for me to read. I will say if you do bullet points, you do not need to end them with periods. So you can get rid of that. All right, and we've moved into 2 pages. So we're just going to go ahead and get rid of this other one. So we don't need this. How do I delete that? Cool. And then special skills, right? They kept this really simple at the bottom. This is super clean looking. I think this is the best. I think this is the best part of this whole resume, actually. So bilingual. By the way, if you are bilingual, list it. Holy crap. Because if you're going to get somebody like me, I'm going to be instantly impressed. My brain does not do second language as well, so I'm always impressed by people who can speak 2 languages. Communication skills, written and verbal. I don't really like written communication skills, written and verbal. In personal training, I mean, it's okay. Like, you know, I think that fits really well in the personal world, but it's like if you're at the same time though, it's like if you are applying for a job, we know you have written and verbal communication, and if your resume is clean, I know that you have written and verbal communication. So I don't know. I think that is something. I don't think that's necessarily something you need to include. So you know, I would actually take that off. And then computer skills, probably not really relevant to the personal training world. So instead, let's look at things that would be relevant for personal training, right? Let's say like Olympic lifting. Let's say they do have POS down here. I think that's actually helpful. Computer, technical skills, like word processing, POS systems. Like, let's say you knew how to use Mind Body Online. Actually, we'll just put that Mind Body Online, right? That's like a POS system that's helpful. And then like client tracking software, right? That'd be handy. Olympic lifts, technical skills like that. And then what else would we say that's relevant? Honestly, that's about it. Let's just leave that alone. Doesn't have to be a long list. You guys think of any skills you'd put down here?
What about the like the new apps, the fitness apps, like familiar with all the new fitness apps that are out, like, because they use a lot of the nutrition apps and the tracking apps and the fitness apps.
Yeah, I like that. Let's do it. What's that? MyFitFoods? Is that what it's called? What's the food?
Yeah, I think it's called
MyFitnessPal.
Fitness. Yeah.
MyFitnessPal is one of them.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, that's a great one.
Sprint specialist.
What is it? Sprint specialist?
Yeah, I don't know if that's. I'm
trying. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Olympic lifting, track and field.
You put gymnastics certification.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. So if we're gonna do that version, let's go and put these on separate lines. Okay, so now we got a little bit of a format change here. So we got to get this to all fit. Definitely should be single, 0 space. And we can put it into 2 columns if you're sneaky about it. So if I remember how to do that, how do I do that? Is it this one? Layout. Give me a second. I gotta find the freaking columns button. I never remember where this stuff is. Is it hiding behind me? No. Where the? That's not it.
There. Over to the left.
Columns, thank you. Boop. All right, and then we got to make it actually fit. So let's see all the stuff here. Well, that explains why that's not fitting very well. Oh, that's right. Actually, don't need to do columns. This is actually a table. All right, split the table into 2 columns. Bam. There we go. Riveting stuff today, today's lecture. All right, bilingual, Olympic lifting, nope. Track and field, Mind Body Online, gymnastics, word processing, and MyFitnessPal. Honestly, word processing can get out of here. We don't need that. Whoops. All right, there we go. And get that to disappear again. All right, so now we got the problem of we just got to get rid of this last little page here. because it's got a little bit of extra stuff. So we are going to just ever so slightly change. This is still, we made this a little too big. I don't know that I love this. But you know what it could be is actually just the fact that like that stuff should be 0. With a little bit of extra space after each of these. And now that looks much better. And we got it to 1 page. Cool. Why don't you like the word council? Ignore. All right, not bad. That'll be a little bit of an updated version. So definitely we put certifications and education up top. That is what I definitely recommend for anybody who's, you know, I think that's pretty good for a lot of like our students. Like you guys are new to the industry. If you don't have a lot of work experience, this is this kind of stuff you can kind of focus on in the beginning. Now, the versions I'm going to send out to you guys, the one that I think is sort of most relevant, it's going to look a little different. I'm going to attach that version. I'm going to attach the template for the version I just worked on just now and send it out to you guys. But the one that I really like that is on Google by default is this one. But I do not like the green. I think you got to get rid of all the color. Just because it's not going to print in, most of the time you're not going to print it in color anyways, and color looks a little weird on a resume. So we'll just keep that all. I don't hate the little line here. I think that's kind of a nice little, oh, it's highlight. Whoops. I think that's actually a nice little touch. What the heck is font color? Oh, there it is. So this is the one I'm going to be sending out to everybody. So same thing. Oh, the one thing I will have changed it though. I will move education up for you, and I will change awards to certifications. So this will be really similar. It'll just say this will be career objective. This will be the education stuff instead. There we go. And then this will be skills. And then I don't know why I'm redoing this in front of you guys. I literally have it saved on my account. And I could even be wrong. The one I came up with earlier is the one that I like. Certifications. There we go. So this is what it'll look like when I send it to you later today. That'll be less work experience. Why am I doing this? I know I'm going to do it later anyways. Okay, there it is. I'm done. I'm touching it. Not touching anymore. All right. Any questions on how this is going to work? Questions, comments, concerns for today?
No, sir.
No.
All right, guys. Well, that is about it. We'll go ahead and kick you out of here. Send you all home. Oh, wait. Never gets old. And yeah, that'll do it. All right, guys. Great job today. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
See you then.